So Chip and I are here with our maiden voyage live YouTube. Smile, Chip. Yeah, look at him. He's happy. We had a few glitches in getting the background, so we don't have the background we want, but we'll do our initial one here and then we'll work on that. And I thought I'd start out by talking about, we get a lot of interesting questions, and a lot of them are fantastic. And then I go back and forth via email with um, some of our customers, and I frequently think, well, I wish everyone could be aware of what we're talking about here, because the questions tend to come up over and over again, very similar questions. One that I got recently that allowed an interesting discussion regarding our products and regarding soil in general is this question. She said, I have heavy clay soil, and my question is it possible to use too much penetrate? I would either like to apply more of it or apply it more frequently to get this soil into shape faster. Is this possible? And if so, I need guidance on on how much or how often. And clay soil seems to be a theme that one of the most popular topics and one of the most vexing problems in gardening. Uh, I answered that with all of our products, you can apply them much more than the rate of frequency that we uh, list on the label. And with penetrate liquid biotiller, if you wanted to, you could apply it every day and it's not going to do any damage and would do a lot of good. The issue is value. So we don't want people to have to be paying for penetrate liquid biotiller every day and not getting a commensurate amount of value from it. So it's a little, we're recommending on our label every 6 months. If you wanted to really step that up and over apply for the sake of trying to maximize benefit in terms of speed and breadth of improvements, then I'd say once a month is a good over application where it's not too expensive and you still get a lot for your money. It's a little bit experimental to be applying once a month, but I would feel comfortable with um, once a month. So you could apply penetrate once a month. But when you're talking about improving clay soil, if you come, all of the products work great on their own and they're all effective on clay soil. But if you combine the products with, or one product like liquid biotiller with one or more of the other products, then you start getting faster improvement. And that's every bit as important as applying it more often, is trying to get a mix of the products because they're all doing different things. For instance, if you were to add optimize, which is a concentrated organic matter, now you get the penetrate liquid biotiller, which has uh, beneficial bacteria and food for the bacteria in lots of different forms, um, kelp and humic acid and a number of other things. And you add that to that concentrated organic matter, which feeds fungi and works very slowly and gradually. Well, you put those two together and you've got uh, faster improvement. Then you add in something like Maximize, which has all kinds of minerals in it, and it has some of the most famous and beneficial fungi. Um, and those minerals kind of turn on, it's like turning on a light switch for attracting life in the soil, beneficial microbes. And that's really the key to changing soil, is we want life in that clay soil. That'll change everything about it over time. And then you have nourish-biosol, which not only also feeds microbes, but feeds plants. So you use any one of those with the penetrate liquid biotiller and you have an improved result. You add all three, and really what you come up with is the fastest possible way to engage the soil food web and change soil, and changing soil isn't really a fast process. So, but what we've attempted to do with these products is come up with concentrated products that are really parts of a really high quality beneficial compost, and and continually input them in the soil in a way that we can change the soil as fast as possible. And that's really the key here, is that beneficial life in the soil can change everything about clay soil. It can change everything about sandy soil. It can change everything about every kind of problematic soil. So I in my answer to the question I just read you, it was something very similar to what I just went on that diatribe about. And then she followed that up with thanking me for the quick reply. I try to answer any of your questions within 24 hours. And she says, what did she say next? So she asked a series of questions here. I wanted to apply the penetrate tomorrow, so I affirmed that that would work. I just made an order and have some product from last year. I think I have most of the products you named, and I take it that none of them can be over applied if they are used once a month with penetrate. I only applied your full kit for clay soil once, and I already see a difference in my soil. That is so encouraging. I didn't think it was possible to do anything with clay, and I'm happy to learn otherwise. It's very possible to completely change everything about clay, but not quickly. It doesn't happen in a week or two. It's different than using, well, it's totally different than using a synthetic fertilizer, which doesn't improve soil at all. These products not only feed plants, but they change everything about the soil over time by the life in the soil. Her question about can we over apply all the products? Can you, each of the products recommends an every 6-month application. And yes, you can go right along with that penetrate once a month. You can use maximize once a month. You can use optimize once a month, and you can use nourish-biosol once a month. It's almost impossible to over apply any of them. The one that maybe you could over apply over time, but there's no downside of it. Let's say for 7 or 8 months in a row, you applied optimize every month at the recommended rate that we're recommending for every 6 months. It breaks down so slowly that you'd end up with this big inventory of optimize in your soil, which isn't bad. It's not going to cause a problem, but it just costs you more money, and you're very unlikely to get a benefit once you've applied it that many times beyond what you would if you just applied it every few months. So all the products can be applied right along with that once a month with the penetrate. The one that you probably see actually quite a benefit from is if you were applying the nourish-biosol once a month on lawn, because lawn loves nitrogen, and nourish-biosol has lots of nitrogen. The source is the dried mycelium from cultured soybean meal and cottonseed meal, and that feeds lawn and changes the soil at the same time, which is quite unusual. You can't buy very many products that will feed the lawn and change your clay soil at the same time. It's antifungal, it's plant-based. That's also very unusual. Difficult to find organic fertilizers that don't use animal-based products. Usually the source of the nitrogen comes from either manure or bone meal or blood meal or something from animals. In this case, completely plant-based. And if you're applying it once a month, you're probably going to have the greenest lawn in the neighborhood, because that nitrogen will really impact the vitality of the lawn. So that's the one that I'm certain you'll get some benefit from, but none of them will be a negative to apply once a month. So then after we got that cleared up, she asked her final question, which was, I think I have a handle on how I want to fix my garden now. One last question. Once I apply mulch, do I have to remove it to reapply, or can I just apply on top of the mulch and water generously? So the whole premise of our product line is, I mean, it's great for new gardens and it's way less expensive than any other method of changing soil. But there was really a void in the market for existing gardens. Almost all the soil improvement techniques that are around are based on new gardens, things that you would do as you install a landscape or a garden. And we came up with this line of product as a way of continuing to improve and change good and bad soils on an ongoing basis in existing gardens. So that's really how it was formulated, is to put right over the top of mulch, right over the top of existing lawn. Now, if you have the opportunity to put it under the mulch or under the turf or right when you plant the seed, then I would recommend that. It works faster that way. But the whole idea of the original formulations that we came up with and started selling of these products to change everything about soil is that they would be just broadcast very conveniently and simply over existing landscapes and existing gardens. And that could be done, as I said, our recommended rate was every 6 months, takes 15 or 20 minutes. If you have a traditional sized yard, if you don't have a huge yard. And in 15 or 20 minutes, you've addressed the most important part of gardening, which is soil health. And that's really what we built this whole line of John and Bob's products on, is soil health being key to success in whatever you're going to grow. And we think this is the simplest, most economical way to address that most important issue. I'm supposed to look at the comments. Where are they? Apparently we have some comments, and I will comment on those as soon as I can see what they are.
The first one is, what are the best vegetables to plant this time of year?
Well, the question regarding best vegetables to plant this time of year. So basically, vegetables are seasonal, and it'll depend on somewhat where you live, although everyone in the United States is going into more like spring and summer vegetables. So if you can probably just, well, it's not always a good measure, because I was going to say you can go to your nursery and box store and see what they're selling, but a lot of times they do sell things out of season. But so the spring and summer crops are things like tomatoes and basil and cucumbers and watermelon and cantaloupe. I know watermelon and cantaloupe aren't vegetables, but all these things you'll find together as eggplant, squash, all of the things that are spring and summer plants are what you would plant now. And we live in a particularly hot part of California. I like to get started as early as possible with things like tomatoes, because they seem very sensitive to heat, and they don't flower well, and the flowers don't pollinate well once you get above a certain temperature. And we get above that temperature pretty early once you get into late May or early June. So I have a magic date in our area, which not everyone agrees with, of March 15th, when we plant things like tomatoes. And at that time, I tend to plant everything and get them off to a quick start, so that we can get blooming and pollination before it gets real hot. And then we get a much better yield than if we wait, say, beyond April, definitely into May. They'll still grow, but I just think production is best if we get them off to an early start and they're well established. They've already bloomed when the hot weather hits. One of you is wondering, can these products be used in the clay base of my raised beds where I grow veggies? In the clay base. Let's see if I interpret your question properly. These products are most effective. I mean, you can put them anywhere in the soil profile and they do good things. But I think they do the most good things and you get the most value for your money if they're used in the top inch or two. So I don't mind people wanting to till them in. It's not necessarily wrong, although if you're using them on an ongoing basis, we kind of discourage tilling because it damages the life we're trying to build. There's a bunch of networks of bacteria and fungi and protozoa, and when we till it, we damage those networks. So we're not going to be recommending much tilling, but initially, if you come into a plot that's got compaction and stuff, we would recommend it be tilled. And then, but I would prefer not to put the products real low in the soil profile. I would prefer that we use them up near the top because that's where most of the soil life is. And through watering and through root growth, then we can, the advantage of them will be realized all through the soil profile. And so I like to put them, it's good if they touch the roots of plants. So if you're planting new plants, I like the products right around the roots or on existing. We just put them in the top inch or two. We can lightly rake them in or incorporate them in some way. And then through water and root growth, that's how that magic happens. Now, also, the other thing that's, my train of thought just left me. I'm trying to keep track of getting other questions here. I got it. So a real key in making these products work as fast and as comprehensively as possible is to have something growing there. It's probably nice to say, I got this fallow land that's terrible. I'm just going to use John and Bob's products on it until it's fantastic soil, and then I'm going to start growing things. The products work much better if you can plant something, even if it's a cover crop or something temporary like radishes. The plant is almost like the engine that makes things change. As I said, we're engaging this soil food web, and we need plants growing in the soil in order for the products to work their best. You know, one of the most, well, my daughter says I'm not supposed to mention mycorrhiza because people will roll their eyes and not know what the heck I'm talking about. But a lot of gardeners know what mycorrhiza is. And mycorrhiza is kind of the most famous of the beneficial fungi, and it attaches itself to roots. And when it does that, and you have mycorrhiza attached to all kinds of different plants, and those roots grow, and that mycorrhiza flourishes, and the mycorrhiza puts out this web that communicates with other plants and other microbes in the soil. That's when this magic of changing and improving everything about soil begins to happen. So, you know, we want to do everything possible to allow mycorrhiza to establish and to grow and to get deeper in the root zone right along with those roots. But it works most effectively if we start out where all of the soil life is, right on the top inch or two or three. And so that's where we're going. If we have to decide now, if we have way more product than we need, I'd go ahead and use it. I'd till it in, I'd use it in early stages of your project, and then I'd put it on again right at the end and focus it in the top inch or two. But if you're limited or you only want to spend as much money, as little as money as possible, then I just make sure it's on the top. Okay, what John and Bob products can I use for my blood orange and lemon? I'm in zone 9A. So in that zone, which is my zone, blood orange is really a neat citrus that we have some all kinds of citrus that and quite a few customers who use our blend on an several of them use it twice a year on their citrus, even once a year would do a fantastic job. And we did a video you might have seen growing mandarin oranges and use it in pots and using 6 cups of blend in every pot twice a year. The gentleman that did it explained that every time he changed the annuals under it, he put 6 cups of blend. So I'm a big fan of blend for citrus, blood oranges and all kinds of citrus. And you could either do it right around now in early spring, and again in about August to September, or you could it would probably do very well as long as you use quite a bit, just once per year, and that once per year would be now. On all of these products, if we were only going to use them once per year, I would make that once per year early spring. I started to explain previously when we were talking about Optimize. Optimize is the one product that you can almost put on the soil anytime, even if it's not a time of the year where there's much gardening going on, because Optimize breaks down very slowly. So even late fall, winter. The other products are better used when the soil is not in dormancy and when the plants are not in dormancy. So other than Optimize, I would use the other products in from about March, in parts of California, even February, through early winter, when the weather starts to change and you start to get cold temperatures that put the soil into dormancy. So maximize, nourish-biosol, penetrate, and those I would use when the soil's active and when the plants are active. And Optimize you can pretty much apply all the time, because it's not going to leach through. One thing I worry about if we're using like nourish-biosol in the middle of the winter is that it could get wet and it could leach through the soil profile without plants ever using it, because plants are dormant. That's not going to happen with Optimize, because it breaks down so slowly, and you like to give it kind of a head start in allowing it to break down. And when it breaks down like beneficial organic matter, and it does for soil what organic matter does for soil, which is quite a few different things.
Let me see if I can fix that.
Okay, so we're checking my screen to see if I've got any other questions here. Oh, there it is. I got all kinds of questions.
So you did that one and that one, so we're here.
Okay. Oh, wow. So as you know, we've done some videos regarding Cropia. I've got a job right now that the Cropia, you might have seen our video that shows where we redoing a garden and turning it into a xeriscape by taking out the fescue lawn and putting in Cropia. And we're going to do another video when that Cropia looks like something. The last video we showed you looked like a bunch of bark. You couldn't really tell that there was Cropia there. So this person says that they're delighted to report that their lawn is now replaced with Cropia, and thanking us for the gift of blend, which, so they must have won one of our, must have given us a brilliant answer to one of our questions on the videos, which you can use, you can win a free bag of something. I've used it up on my roses and hibiscus collection. I'll keep you updated as they bloom. So there's no question there, but Cropia is an interesting plant that gives us a low water way of creating something that looks like a lawn. And the next one says, my question for you is, which is your favorite place to buy dwarf fruit trees in California? Even anywhere near Fresno is fine. You know, there isn't, I don't have one favorite place. I assume you mean more of a retail place. One place that I look all the time and their sources are fine, and it's probably, some people would look down their nose at it, but a lot of times I find things that are difficult to find at our sources. You know, our sources are wholesale nurseries, and sometimes dwarf citrus are hard to find there. And so I'm constantly looking at Lowe's and Home Depot and box stores like that. And those do have, and they do have, they buy from good sources, and they do have, their prices really are not much higher than what we buy wholesale. So I'm constantly looking at what they have available, and they have some interesting plants, and a lot of times state-of-the-art type stuff that it's just coming out. They're buying from reputable growers, and so I don't have a real good answer. We have some wholesale sources that we're constantly using, but they're not available to a regular home gardener. So I think that would be my best tip, is that be assured you're getting good quality plants, and they have things a lot of times that are hard to find in terms of citrus and other fruit trees, although their fruit tree selection is pretty good right now, but then as we get into the summer, it does decline. What can you put in flower beds to keep weeds out? Such a simple question, yet such a difficult thing to answer. So we've done a couple videos on how to minimize weeds, and it's a topic that is, the answers are surprising. One way that I think very few people are aware of is the healthier soil you have with more complex life in it, not just bacteria, but fungi and protozoa and good nematodes and earthworms. So not a bacterial dominated soil, but fungally active and higher life microbes of all kinds, the less weed pressures you're going to have. So a lot of people say to me, well, if I use your products and it makes my soil healthy, my weeds are going to grow even better. And that's really not true from a scientific standpoint. Really, the truth is, the more you develop your soil, the less weed pressures you're going to have. Now, you're not going to eliminate all weeds, but you're going to reduce weeds dramatically. The other thing that's a big player in reducing weeds and is great for soil at the same time, if we think soil is the most important part of gardening, we would all use some kind of top dressing mulch, and top dressing mulch is fantastic for limiting weeds. No chemicals involved. In terms of lawn, we have some videos coming out right now. Next Wednesday, we'll have one coming out where we're showing you the best way to not have weeds in lawn is to have a really healthy lawn, water it properly, mow it properly in a very disciplined way, and make that lawn impossible to compete with. If all of these fail you and you still have problems with weeds, either in planting areas where you have a lot of mulch and you've tried to develop the soil as much as possible, or in your lawn where you've done everything right and your lawn is green and thriving and as healthy as it can possibly be, if weeds still persist, then what I recommend is we look at specifically what weeds are a problem in a lawn. We target them, and if you can't tolerate them, then you would have to come up with a chemical way of eradicating them, and we could recommend that way depending on what the weed is. In shrub areas, kind of the same thing. If I have chronic problems with weeds, I do consider the use of a pre-emergent herbicide, which has to be timed just perfectly to get that. Obviously, that is a chemical, and it's not that great for your soil, but it is a way of controlling weeds. And I don't, a lot of companies that you would hire would just put it on an ongoing basis, whether you have a weed problem or not. I would use it strategically when you know you have a problem and specifically for that problem, and then go back to not using it and using all of our other methods of limiting weeds. So we do have a couple of good videos on this topic you can refer to on our YouTube channel that talk about the best ways of limiting weeds. And there's no magic, easy solution. A lot of it is diligence. And you could manually pull them, obviously. We're looking for something simpler than that. So my first preference, what we start with is healthy soil and a mulch layer. And then we look to, if we have to use chemical ways, I like to use a pre-emergent if I have to. A lot of people ask me, are there any organic pre-emergents or organic ways of killing weeds? Obviously, glyphosate or Roundup is looked down upon, and I would say use it only if you absolutely need to. There's an organic weed killer made from citrus peels that I've used, and it's called Avenger, and it works good if the sun's out and you have bright sun on it. It burns the weeds, so it doesn't work on something like Bermuda that requires systemic killing of the roots, but it works on anything that you can just kill the top on and the weed's dead. So it is effective. Now, it's not all that great for your soil either. It's highly acidic, and obviously you're not trying to spray it on the soil, but it's probably a better option than Roundup if you're using a lot of Roundup. But it also makes sense to limit that. From a pre-emergent standpoint, you'll see a lot of literature and things online about corn gluten meal as an organic pre-emergent. I have not had good success with it, and I've tried it quite a bit. And as a pre-emergent in lawn, it's been ineffective. I've tried it different ways, and so it's not something I've continued to use. The corn gluten meal does have nitrogen, so it does act as a fertilizer, but from a killing weed seed standpoint, I haven't been able to get it to be effective. Okay, and then we go on to, I do cabbage type vegetables, onions, and turnip greens here in Indianapolis. All right. I just picked a bunch of beets that were growing and some fennel or anise. And we had a bunch of delicious cabbage, John and Bob's cabbage, which is the best kind of cabbage. That's the only thing we used in the soil. The soil's rich. That's how you're going to grow cabbage and vegetables and onions and turnip greens with the most nutrient density is by having really healthy soil. And that's the hallmark of our product line. How long does it take to heal bad soil with your products? So that is another great question that almost everybody asks me. And it's really a difficult one to answer, although I'll do my best. It's not like, if you have a lawn and you put on ammonia sulfate, I can tell you that in about 7 to 10 days, you'll see the lawn change, So we don't have, there's nothing that reliable with changing soil. What I do notice, I think Chip wants to get down here. I do notice is that we begin to see some improvements. It depends on the crop you're growing and how bad your soil is and what we're trying to improve. But in really bad, say heavy clay soil, I usually see some kind of changes either in the plant material or even by digging in the soil. I'll see some slight change in the color. I'll see some increase perhaps in earthworms. Not a dramatic change in the soil, but subtle changes in the soil within a couple of months. We can frequently see changes to the plants before that. So if we agree, or I'm telling you that in 2 months, we start to see changes in the soil, then the changes are ongoing beyond that. And especially if we keep applying our products, we keep trying to improve the life in the soil, and we keep growing things, and we keep, all the techniques that we've already talked about having healthy soil and minimizing weeds and such, then those benefits build on each other. And, after a year, it should be easy to notice substantive changes in not only the plants you're growing and the lawn you're growing and drainage and or if you have sandy soil, in water retention. And as you keep going after 2 years, it's fairly easy to see. And then if you put a shovel in it, you should start to see some changes, and it becomes much easier to dig in. And over time, it's fundamentally different soil, but it does take some time. And it's difficult to say exactly how much time, but we go with that guideline of 2 months begins the being able to see some really good changes, even though they're subtle. Will blend work well on grass? Blend works great on grass. They'll, depending on what your issue is on your lawn, it might not be my first recommendation, because especially if you have a big lawn, this just came up today in answering a question online. Blend is the most expensive of the products because we put 3 products together and we try to get the rate of each of those 3 in the blend. So you have to apply a lot. The rate is up to 20 pounds per thousand, whereas optimized by itself, you only go 3 to 5 pounds per thousand. So obviously optimize is way less expensive, and blend is the most expensive. And usually on lawn, what we're after for people to see a benefit is you need macronutrients like nitrogen. And so our product that has the most nitrogen is nourish-biosol, but it's also nourish-biosol is dried mycelium, which is fantastic for building life in the soil. So if we're building life in the soil and we're making the lawn green, that's a pretty efficient product to use on your lawn. Now, the other products put together would speed the process up, but they'd be a lot more expensive. So very frequently on lawn, I would recommend either nourish-biosol by itself or our other organic fertilizer by itself called Value Rich. And Value Rich is a chicken waste-based product, whereas nourish-biosol is a plant-based organic fertilizer. And they both build soil and feed plants. And so in a lawn, that's really the key. And sometimes those lawns are big. In the letter I got today, he had 14,000 square feet of lawn, and he was concerned that if he used blend, which is a great thing to do, but it might be overkill from a budget standpoint, because each bag would cover somewhere around 2,500 square feet. And so to get to 14,000 and to do it a couple times a year, it can be expensive. It is expensive. So I recommended that he use Optimize, which gets you to the same point. You apply, he could do just 1 bag of Optimize and it'll treat his 14,000 square foot lawn. It'll have some of the same benefits. Those benefits will occur slower, but they will still occur. And I would keep using the Optimize. And here and there, maybe once a year, I'd use either nourish-biosol or Value Rich, because those really feed the lawn. And while you're feeding the lawn, we're building that soil. And if, so even though blend is great for lawn, if you only have 200 or 300 or 400 or 500 square feet, it's not a big deal. I'd say let's use blend because it does everything as fast as possible. We've got all 3 products in there. But if you've got 14,000 square feet, then we come up with other ways of trying to give you the value and still build your soil, because healthy soil is key to a healthy lawn. I could go on that for quite a while, but I think I'll move on to the next one, and you can re-ask questions if you want me to say more about that. But hopefully you got the idea there. This person warns that this is random, so I should probably not read this for the first time out loud, but I'll try it. But what kind of dog breed is Chip? Yeah, he's so cute and well behaved in all your videos. He is a fantastic dog. My wife says if we he was a rescue, so we don't know what breed he is, but she says if we found what litter he came from, and there were 11 others, that she'd take them all. But fortunately, we haven't found the litter he came from. But so we don't know what breed. I do have a deal I can send in to find out what breed, and I'd like to do that, but I haven't done that yet. So Chip is just a fantastically well-behaved mix of something. Everyone seems to have their own idea of what he is. I have seen some dogs that look like him, but we don't know what breed, and he enjoys making the videos and is extremely well behaved. So this person says, I've always left a few of my vegetable beds fallow every few years with the idea that they need to rebuild itself. Are you saying that using your products will make this unnecessary? Wow, these are good questions. Uh, yes, that's what I'm saying. And this happens a lot in containers too, but most gardening um, professionals will advocate for doing just what she or he says there, and that is to rotate crops and leave and not plant tomatoes in the same area two times in a year, and in a pot take all the soil out and change it if you've grown something like tomatoes, which mines nutrients very on a very heavy basis. But if you use our whole line, the blend and the penetrate liquid biotiller, I'd prefer twice a year, but at least once per year, you'll find, and then experiment with it. But you'll find that you don't need to pay attention to that. What we're doing is we're constantly revitalizing that soil, and you don't need to change a potting soil. You might have to top it off because you do get some decomposition and leaching. And you won't have to leave areas fallow. Just continue to enrich the soil and use the products on an ongoing basis. And that productivity will continue. I have run into a couple of times where on some vegetable gardens, we started to get declining production, say on tomatoes. We were planting in exactly the same place every year. And in one case, the owner said, I've never had such a bad yield of tomatoes. And so what we did is we increased the rate on the blend. And usually vegetable gardens are relatively small, so it's not a big deal to increase the rate. In that case, we went to 30 pounds per thousand, and it worked like crazy. The next year, the tomatoes were back to being having a tremendous crop. So yes, that's what I'm saying is you can use nourish-biosol, optimize, maximize, and penetrate liquid biotiller, and you end up with a self-sustaining soil that you don't need to be worried about rotating or throwing away potting soil after it's used, even after you use plants that use a lot of nutrients. And this person says, hi, John. Hi, thank you for greeting us and watching today. We appreciate it. If this works, we'll do it more often. And if you seem to get something out of it, is it necessary to use penetrate with all your products? No, it's not necessary. And usually I'll just recommend the penetrate liquid biotiller for specific circumstances, or initially as we try to get this process going, because it's really good at kicking off the process of building life in the soil. It has the lowest form of life in it, which is beneficial bacteria. And in that way, it works kind of like plankton in the ocean. So you have plankton and more advanced forms of life develop from that. The same thing with beneficial bacteria. But once you use it, or once or twice, then we could be beyond that. And especially if things are doing pretty well, usually I wouldn't reapply the penetrate liquid biotiller, except you noticed in my last answer, if we're trying to get around this idea of leaving areas fallow or throwing away potting soil, then I would use it in those kinds of situations. But in landscaping or even in vegetable gardens, a lot of times we'll go with blend only, or on a lawn, definitely. Now, if we know we have some issues like fungal disease or poor penetration of water, then I would use the penetrate liquid biotiller, and I might do it over and over. But it isn't, none of the products are automatic that we need to use them every single time. We found ourselves on every job we were doing, we were using those three dry products, maximize, nourish-biosol, and optimize. So we thought it'd be a lot easier to use them if we just put them all together. We just apply once rather than putting them on separately. For the first couple of years, we didn't catch on to that rather simple idea, and we used to apply them separately. So I tend to use those three together, except we already discussed that I don't always do that in the lawn because of value reasons. If the budget is there, it's great to use all three. But if I'm trying to get by with as little expenditure of money as possible, then I probably wouldn't use all three in a lawn, and I probably wouldn't use penetrate on an ongoing basis. I'd use the ones that give me that color and that vitality and continue to change the soil, and all of our products do that. So then I'd look for value rich and nourish-biosol. I just overseeded my lawn. How long do you wait to call back my lawn guy? I told him to return in 6 weeks. Wow. Is that an okay time frame? Not really. By your lawn guy, I don't know if you mean the lawn guy mows the lawn or the lawn guy applies things to the lawn, like fertilizer and such. But you ask a great question, which if you watch our video next Wednesday, which we'll post right around 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we answer that question, but I'll give you a preview of it here. We're going to try to make this seed. If you, is yours a seeded lawn? I think, yeah, I just overseeded my lawn. So we want this seed to jump up out of the ground. And by using our products that have these ingredients that impact the germination speed and the germination rate, in other words, how many seeds germinate, we can make it come up real fast. We want it to come up fast and densely. And we do that with proper water, proper products over the seed, and a little top dressing mulch over the seed. And I think we can do that. And you'll see in the video we show you next week, we did that in like 9 or 10 days. And I mowed it after about 11 or 12 days for the first time. And then I mowed it again at about day 15 for the second time. And I like frequent, quick or soon mowing as soon as it's long enough to mow, because that's what allows it to start to root deeper and spread and get strong real fast. That's what allows us to have a lawn that prevents and defeats weeds very effectively. And so if I've already mowed it after 15 days, if you're talking about 6 weeks for somebody to mow it, I think that's way too long. I'd rather mow that after 14 days at the longest, assuming that everything went well and it germinated well. If it doesn't germinate well, then you end up with a lot of weeds and problems and trying to fill it in. But if you follow the procedure we give in the video, we already posted one of those videos that showed how we planted and overseeded. And then the next video shows after it's just looking brown from the top dressing, what I did from there to make it jump up out of the ground and then get to this point where I mowed it quickly. So the 6 weeks is too long really for anything. Then after I mow it once or twice, I like to fertilize it with either our nourish-biosol or our value rich. And maybe you're talking about your lawn guy fertilizing after 6 weeks. I'd prefer to fertilize it sooner than that. And I'd prefer to mow it way sooner than that. So I don't like the 6 weeks. That's too long. And watch our video and it'll give you more information on that topic, or ask another question here if you want to know something specific. How far out from Fresno does your team accept landscaping contracts? Not too far, really. We earlier in, this is our 42nd or 43rd year, I think 43rd year in business. And so in the 15 and 20 years, we were doing projects all over, even San Francisco, San Diego, all over the place. And doesn't really work very well when you are, some people can make it work. I couldn't make it work where we go away from home and try to have it be profitable. When things go wrong, you don't have the people that you know and that know you to help you. And so we've kind of gotten away from that over time. We're very interested in helping people with their soil all over the place. Farther away, the better, and as long as it's in the United States. Well, not necessarily, but it's good no matter where you are. We'll help you with your soil. But in terms of actually doing the work, in terms of contracting, we don't go very far away from Fresno, and we stay busy. You might have seen, for instance, we've done a few videos from a regional hospital in Fresno, and we're actually working on two major hospitals in Fresno at the same time, and the university in Fresno at the same time. And so we tend to do a lot of those large commercial type jobs, and um, that's the source of a lot of our revenue. And then we just fill in with custom residential that we try to be selective, or sometimes custom office buildings or something. So we're not really after a lot of residential work. We try to be selective and just do a few around Fresno. It's also good for us to keep doing those so that don't get out of touch with all of these issues, because we're constantly I think that's one of the benefits of our YouTube videos and of a session like this, is that's what we're doing every day. I'm out looking at gardens, we're installing them, we're helping people take care of them, we're answering their questions, we're seeing the problems and trying things to solve the problems. And I think that's different than most of the YouTube channels that I see regarding gardening, where they tend to be in their home garden or something. We're in all kinds of landscape situations and garden situations, and we're think maybe it's interesting to show you those situations, and that's what we're going to try to do in a really high quality way, with the focus being soil. I compost all the fall leaves from Japanese maple leaves, other garden refuse. Can I speed up the process by adding some of John and Bob's products to the compost pile? It does speed up the process a little, and the products like Maximize, Optimize, even nourish-biosol, even penetrate, they all would work for that process and would help. That's not how we market them, and that isn't says nothing about that on the label, because we're trying to market something that can change your soil, and that can go, it's hard to make compost, and it's especially hard to make really good quality compost. So we're trying to provide a product that you can buy anytime, and it's concentrated. With compost, usually tends to be in big piles. Our products in little bags that are easy to apply. Hard to apply compost in your yard, spending just 15 minutes twice a year. But these products, small bags, I used to say they could fit in the trunk of your car, but they can probably even, depending on the size of your yard, fit in your glove compartment. So very easy, simple, trying to make it where there's no excuse for any gardener to not use something to improve their soil. If they go into a garden center and the garden center says you need compost, that they'll usually ignore that, because a lot of work, a lot of trouble, a lot of cost. But if they can get this little bag and just throw it on in a few minutes and do that twice a year, there's a good chance they might do it. And that's what we're trying to get across here. So yes, you can add those one or more. The penetrate liquid biotiller is actually like a simple, better storing compost tea. And what we try to do is come up with a product. Compost tea is great, but it has its drawbacks, because you can't store it at all, and it's a lot of trouble to make, and it's hard to buy. And so we keep our penetrate liquid biotiller in two separate containers. We don't mix them until you're ready to put it in your soil. And so that would be great, spraying it on a compost pile, and it would improve the process. Actually, all of the products would, and all of the products together would do that effectively. Thank you so much. Look forward to next Wednesday's video. Yeah, it should be good. Do you soil test garden every year? It depends. If you're struggling with issues, it might be helpful. Usually I find it's not necessary to soil test that often. What I really like to know from a soil test is the pH. Almost all the other problems, not necessarily all the other problems, but almost especially if they're modest problems, these products and putting life in the soil will normalize and mediate and fix. But the pH, if it's drastically off, either too low or too high, it can make it so our products won't even work. But if the pH is between, I'd say 5 and 8, then we'll introduce these products. We'll start to build life in the soil, and the life in the soil will fix everything almost all the time. And so if I go into a neighborhood and I see plants and lawns doing well all around, then I know the pH is probably in a normal range, and we don't even need to test the soil. We'll just uh, enliven it and infuse it with microbes and food from microbes and attractants from microbes, and that's gonna do the job. But if there's some question, then I do like to find out the pH. And then if we find out the pH and we take measures, and we have a couple of videos that addressed how you impact pH. One was about Las Vegas soil and caliche. One was about gypsum. You can look back at those videos. But once we learn the pH, then we address it, then we might do another soil test in a year because we want to see if our efforts are working. But if we have no specific problems and we start applying our products and things do great, then I wouldn't test the soil on an ongoing basis because everything's doing fine, and these products are mitigating any imbalances in the soil. It's soil life that's the key, not necessarily if you have not enough iron or not enough zinc. Those things will be addressed by soil life. But if the pH is off or you have way too much salt, it could make it so our products can't even engage. So that is something I like to find out. And so I like the idea of a soil test. And if I do a soil test, it's for a particular reason, and we try to address that reason, then it would be nice to know by doing another soil test a year down the road. But once we get to a point where things are doing well, then I don't usually test it on an ongoing basis. Do you have a storefront in Fresno for your products? If you call our office number at 559-291-4419, Austin will usually answer, or you can leave him a message, and he can arrange, if you wanted to come to Fresno, he can arrange. Am I still on? I changed venues here. It's showing something other than me on mine. He can arrange for you. Oh, I see. He can arrange for you to buy it directly from us at our facility, which isn't a retail storefront, but you're welcome to come. And we just like people to call so that we can get it ready. And it's in Fresno, kind of a little bit out in the country, but not that far. It's actually a Fresno address. And so you're welcome. And also there are nurseries that carry it. The biggest source of it all across California is Armstrong Nurseries, which is the biggest nursery chain in California. All Armstrong nurseries carry John and Bob's, and many nurseries in Southern California carry it. Some nurseries in Fresno carry it, although we have a difficult time getting them to carry all the products. But they can get it if you ask them to. Nurseries like Belmont and Green Hills carry it. Riverside, I think, carries it, and they can definitely get it. So those nurseries are sources, or you can buy it directly from us. If you order it online, we'll ship it to you without a charge if it's more than $80, more than $79. And it'll go right to your doorstep via UPS. So, but you're welcome to come to our facility and pick it up. Would you add blend to potting soil if you were growing dahlias in pots? I would. I think it'd be great for dahlias in pots. And so that's a simple answer. Yes, I would use it for dahlias. We have a garden that we use. We've done a number of videos from there where he grows a lot of dahlias. And when we first got involved about 5 or 6 years ago now, they had lots of disease problems, not just with the dahlias, but with almost everything they were growing. And they were using all kinds of fungicides and lots of merit, which is more of a pesticide. And So we converted it over. We started focusing on the soil, and it's been very effective. Now those dahlias he's growing in the ground, but yes, I think it'd be great in pots for dahlias. I build vegetable gardens on the East Coast. I watched your videos over the last couple of years. How long does it take to create life in container newly composed soil with your product? That's a difficult one to answer. Not very long. I can't say I've approached that exact issue in the past, but I have used it in very hard clay-like soil that we can't, it's hard to dig in, and we can't find any sign of life in it. And that is one where I used to penetrate, and then I used blend, and after 2 months, it looked quite a bit different, and we had earthworms, not zillions of them, but we could find an earthworm, and we could somewhat dig in it. So I can't answer that exactly. I don't know how long it would take, but I think you'd see immediate benefit. But immediate is, a month or two, not a day or two or a week. We are from San Jose, and we do travel south a couple times a year. Would love to stop by Fresno for John and Bob's. You're welcome to come. Call us first, and we could have everything ready for you. And maybe you could meet Chip. Someone came the other day and asked to see the president. And when I started to answer him, he said, "I mean Chip." And then Chip came out, and he started taking videos of Chip with him and Chip in all kinds of poses. Said he had to show it to his wife. And so Chip's available if you want to do a selfie with Chip. And you're welcome to come as long as you call us first on that office number, 559-291-4419. Which grass type do you prefer for transition zone in Torrance? It's that I have been asked that question also online, and it's a difficult, it's hard to say, oh, absolutely plant this. Even in the transition zone, you have some choices, and those choices would probably best be answered or decided upon by you based on how you're going to use your lawn and what you want it to look like. I mean, a safe answer, the most versatile lawn, because it's pretty tough, it's pretty drought tolerant, and it's pretty disease resistant, and stays green all year round, is some kind of tall fescue blend. That's probably the safest answer, but some people might not like that look. That look, you mow high, it stays green all year round, which a lot of people like that. And if you've watched any of our videos, we promote a type of, from seed, we've planted a lot of RTF, which is rhizomatous tall fescue. And that is a little bit unique in that it does self-repair better than most other fescues. And that seems to be a tough, easy to grow and attractive, fairly fine textured, a lot of tall fescue is very coarse, kind of weedy looking. So that's a good one. So I think some of that would be determined by what kind of lawn you like, the look of, and how you're going to use it. And you've probably got quite a range of things you could grow in. You're in a zone where you can grow most things, and you could grow most kinds of lawn. So we'd want a little more information as to what your preferences are. And maybe we'd talk you into Cropia instead, if because it's going to use a lot less water. I live in North Florida, live on some acreage. Live or live on some acreage? Must be live on some acreage. And I have a lot of dense clay. I'll check out your solutions here soon. Great. One guy called me from, was it Georgia or no, Virginia? And he said when he watched our videos and looked online, it just sounded too good to be true. Now I noticed he ordered some today. So I've talked to him a couple times on the phone. It really is true. You can change clay by infusing it with life. And that's about the only way you can change it. Now, does it happen in a week or two? No, but you can change clay soil for the better by infusing it with life. And you can do that on an ongoing basis with our products easily. It works the same way compost does. So compost will also change. A good quality compost will change clay soil over time. And what these products are really concentrated compost. And we're going to change everything about that clay by infusing it with life and encouraging all kinds of beneficial microbes. So yes, check it out. See what you think. Trees do not like dense clay at all, as you know, trying to grow a food native forest. That's true. He says dense clay. So, clay can be problematic. If you just have clay-like soil, it's not necessarily terrible. It depends on how bad the clay is. But some types of clay soil, they retain nutrients very well. You need to manage the water very carefully. We have a lot of clay-like and clay soil in my area here in Fresno. We have a video we did on how to plant a street tree. City of Fresno requires boring down to sand, actually, and then backfilling that with water or backfilling it with native soil and then with water for like 3 weeks to make sure you get all the substance handled. And so we show that video how that gets through the clay. And then we try to do that in a way where we don't have these really slick, firm sides where the roots can't get outside of that hole. But there are ways like that really help with the clay soil. But yes, a really hard clay soil is a problem for trees. Boring is something that we do a lot of, and you can bore through that clay layer and the important part is get that water to drain through. And so that's what bored holes do.
See if anybody has any last questions and then say we're going to stop.
So if anyone else has any questions, send them our way right now and I will answer that. If not, we will end this maiden voyage of our live YouTube video here. So I'll be looking to see if anyone wants me to answer anything else. If not, I've enjoyed it. You've asked remarkably good questions, and most people seem to tell me I'm best when people ask me questions rather than just talking off the top of my head. So I appreciate your interaction. pH probe worth buying? Do-it-yourself pH probe. Yeah, I think they're worth trying. They're interesting, and sometimes what happens is it's hard to believe the results, and so you end up using a soil lab anyhow. But I like playing around with them and experimenting with them and seeing if it seems accurate. If it seems accurate, a lot of times I'll go by it, or then I'll confirm it with a test, which I might not have done otherwise. The reality is a good soil test at a soil lab isn't maybe as expensive as you might imagine, especially if you limit what kind of information you want them to give to you. We did another video on that where we were at a hospital in Fresno, and we had a soil test done. In that case, it was required that we test quite a few different things. I think that soil test was like $250, but you can, if you want mostly just pH and a couple other interesting things, you could get a soil test done at a professional soil lab for less than that. So, but yes, I think there is some merit to a do-it-yourself soil probe for pH, and it's an interesting thing to be looking at and aware of. And I think that's it for this session. We appreciate your participation. We were worried that maybe we'd have one person, and after 5 minutes, our chat would get dull. But you asked me, we had a lot of people, and you asked me a lot of excellent questions. We appreciate it, and we'll see you back in this space sometime soon. Good night.